I don't remember the sound of the crash. What I remember is the silence that came afterward, the kind that presses into your ears like cotton soaked in water. That, and the slow shimmer of broken glass floating in the air around me, as if time decided it had seen enough and just paused. My name's Jonathan Hale. I'm 42 years old. I live in a sleepy little town in western Pennsylvania, population under 7,000. You've probably never heard of Dunlow, a half-forgotten ridge town with dying churches, rusted gas stations, and only one blinking traffic light. I worked remote IT support for a logistics company. Nothing glorious. Nothing dramatic. Until April 9th. The night I died. It had been a long drive. I'd gone to Pittsburgh for a weekend conference, stayed a little too late on Sunday, had a few beers with an old college friend, and decided to make the 2-hour drive home anyway. Dumb decision. I was on Route 281, somewhere near Laurel Hill, winding through fog-drenched roads, the kind you see in low-budget horror films. Then came the deer. A young buck, I think, eyes white as frost, leaping into the road from nowhere. I jerked the wheel hard. There was no time to think. Just the shriek of rubber, the wheel locking, and the sharp, sickening tilt of the world as my Toyota veered off into the trees. Metal met bark. The airbag hit my face like a sledgehammer. Then silence. Except it wasn't silence. There was a frequency, low electric, just under hearing, like a dial between stations. And I realized I wasn't in the car anymore. Not really. I was standing, or floating, in a space that didn't seem to have a floor, a ceiling, or walls. Everything around me was a sort of white-gray mist. Not fog. It was denser than that. Like memory condensed into air. At first I thought it was a hallucination. I told myself I must have been in shock, that my brain was throwing out dying sparks. But then something moved through the mist. It was a figure. Humanoid. Tall. Its shape was vaguely there. A robe, maybe? A cloak? But no feet touched the ground, and its face was wrong. Not scary, exactly, just indescribable. Like trying to remember a face you only saw once in a dream years ago. Familiar and utterly alien. I couldn't breathe. Not out of fear. I literally had no breath. No lungs. Just awareness, floating like a candle flame. Then it spoke. Not in words. In knowing. You are marked. I didn't hear it. I understood it. Like a memory someone else left in my mind. And with that understanding came something else, heat. Right in the center of my forehead. It wasn't fire, not exactly. More like a pressure, like someone pressing a warm coin to my skin from the inside. I tried to speak, to ask what it meant, what mark it was talking about, but no words came. Only thought. Why? Why me? What is this? The figure moved closer, though its feet still didn't exist. The mist rippled around it like fabric in water. Then I saw them. Faces. Thousands. No, millions. People. Hanging in the mist like reflections in shattered glass. Their expressions were blank. Their eyes locked forward. Each of them had something glowing faintly above their eyes, like a symbol I couldn't quite decipher. Circular. Linear. Changing as I looked. And then the figure pointed, without a hand, and I saw my own face among them. Same expression. Same mark. I don't know what hit harder, the shock, or the terror that I hadn't screamed. You are one of the few who will return, the voice said, not in sound, but in soul. Tell them, the mark is not punishment. It is recognition. Before I could ask anything else, the world turned inside out. Like a wave folding back into itself. Light became sound, sound became color. And suddenly, I gasped awake. Paramedics were dragging my body out of the crumpled car. One of them screamed, "We've got a pulse!" Later, I found out I was clinically dead for 7 minutes. That should have been the end of it. A miracle, a near-death experience, a story to laugh about over beer. But 3 nights later, I woke up at 3:03 a.m. with a burn on my forehead. and a symbol in the bathroom mirror. It hadn't been there before. It flickered when I blinked. They say trauma lives in the body. But whatever happened to me that night, it didn't live in my body. It lived around it. Like static cling, like heat haze. I could feel it in mirrors. In silence. In the places between thoughts. The symbol kept appearing. Not always visibly. Sometimes I'd catch it in the steam on the bathroom mirror. Other times in the shimmer of my phone screen before it turned on. Once, and this one still makes me shiver, I saw it flicker across my pupil when I looked directly into my eye. 3 intersecting lines. Forming a sort of wheel. No culture or language I searched online had a perfect match. It wasn't Celtic. It wasn't occult. It just was. That's when the dream started. In the first one, I was walking through a hospital corridor. Empty, endless. The fluorescent lights buzzed like flies trapped in jars. On the walls, framed photos. But not of people. Of marks. The same symbol over and over, each one slightly off, like it was evolving. I approached one frame, and the photo inside moved. I realized it was a window, not an image. And inside it, a man sat in a dark room, weeping. His forehead glowing. He looked up at me. He saw me. And I woke up gasping, drenched in cold sweat, with the taste of metal in my mouth. I needed answers. So I posted, anonymously, in a fringe metaphysical subreddit. I typed the details plainly, no embellishment, no drama. Clinically dead for 7 minutes. Saw a figure in mist. Told I was marked. Symbol appears on my forehead randomly. Can't find meaning. Anyone else? I expected trolls. Memes. Maybe silence. What I got was a message. Private. No username, just a string of numbers. You saw him too. I thought I was alone. You need to get to St. Bellamy's. There's something beneath the chapel. No punctuation. No signature. Just an address in upstate New York. Near a town called Grapevine. Population, 412. I sat staring at the screen. My heart thudded behind my ribs. Something about the message felt wrong. Not threatening. Just premature, like someone answered a question I hadn't yet dared to ask. Still, I saved the address. 3 days passed. The mark hadn't shown itself since the dream. But something had changed in how people looked at me. Not all, but a few. A woman at the grocery store froze mid-step and dropped her basket. A man on the street said nothing, but smiled in a way that made my skin itch. They looked at me like they recognized me. Like they expected me. That Friday, I drove out to the local library. Old brick building, underfunded and quiet. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Folklore? Near-death experiences? Symbolism? But then it found me. The librarian, an older woman with silver hair and sharp gray eyes, watched me too long when I walked in. Her name tag said, Lucille. I smiled politely. Do you have anything on, ancient symbols? Her gaze narrowed. Do you mean before or after death? My stomach dropped. I stammered. What do you mean? She looked around. Leaned closer. They usually come alone, she whispered. But when they start seeking others, that's when the burning begins. I didn't ask what she meant. I couldn't. Because her forehead twitched. And for a split second, just a flicker, I saw the same symbol under her skin. But it wasn't glowing. It was cracked. Leave town, she said too calmly. Before the mark begins to speak. Then she turned and walked into the stacks. I never saw her again. That night, I packed a duffel bag. I didn't tell anyone. Just filled the tank, turned off my phone, and pointed the car north. Toward Grapevine. Toward St. Bellamy's chapel. Toward the place beneath it, where someone was waiting. Grapevine didn't show up on most maps. Just a faint gray dot nestled in the folds of upstate New York's forgotten hills. No gas stations. No billboards. Just dying trees, rusted fences, and a thick, almost greasy silence hanging over the land. By the time I reached the town limits, the sky had turned that particular shade of dusk where color stops meaning anything. The sign said, "Welcome to Grapevine, EST 1813, a place for reflection." Half the letters were peeling. I didn't feel welcome. I didn't feel watched either. I felt expected. St. Bellamy stood at the edge of the town's only graveyard. It was small, Gothic in the way only rural American churches try to be, spired roof, faded red bricks, and a bell tower that looked more like a chimney. But something about it felt wrong. Not corrupted. Not evil. Just misaligned, like a mirror hung half an inch too far left. I stepped inside. No one greeted me. No priest, no choir, not even a creaking pew. Just dust, old wood, and stained glass windows that depicted no saints I recognized. One of them, above the altar, showed a robed figure with no face, extending its hand toward a spiral of stars. In the center of its palm was the mark. I walked down the aisle slowly, boots tapping against ancient tile. The air was colder here, but dry. Like paper that had forgotten it used to be alive. At the altar, I found a plaque. He who bore the mark first did not bear it last. The gate is not a gate. It is a mirror. That word again, mirror. I turned slowly. The chapel was empty. Until it wasn't. The figure stood by the last row of pews. A man, thin, tall, skin tight against bone. Wearing a priest's cassock that looked older than the church itself. His face was long, clean-shaven, eyes sunken but sharp. He had the posture of someone who knew he was not entirely human anymore. "You came," he said. His voice didn't echo. It just settled in the air like fog. I nodded. "You sent the message?" He shook his head once, very slowly. "I am only here to open what has already opened within you. I don't understand. That is why you were chosen." He turned and began walking toward a door behind the altar. A heavy wooden slab with 7 small indentations carved into its surface, like worn thumbprints. I hesitated. "What's under there?" He paused, hand on the rusted handle. "There is no under," he said. "Only within." And then he pulled it open. The passage led downward. Stone steps. No lights. Just a low phosphorescent glow that seemed to radiate from the very air. As we descended, I began to hear whispers. Not voices, not words. Intentions. Thoughts not mine brushing the edge of my skull. He bears it. He carries it inward. He walks between. "What is the mark?" I asked. "Is it a curse?" The priest stopped. We stood before a round iron door etched with 7 intersecting circles. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of sorrow in his expression. "It is a signature," he said. "But not of the divine." I swallowed. "Then whose?" His eyes didn't blink. "Not whose. What's?" He opened the door. And I stepped through. The room wasn't a room. It was too vast, too wrong. The walls bent in directions my mind couldn't process. Symbols swirled across the stone, but as I stared, I realized they weren't written. They were alive, crawling just beneath the surface, like ideas trying to escape the rock. In the center of the chamber stood a mirror. Tall. Shaped like a door frame. Its surface shimmered like mercury. Around it, 7 stone chairs, each facing inward. And on each chair, bones. Some still wore scraps of robes. One had a ring. Another held a wooden staff that looked petrified from age. But all of them bore one thing in common. Their skulls were split, clean down the center of the forehead. And beneath each crack, the mark. I turned to the priest, suddenly cold. "What happened to them?" He looked at the mirror, not me. "They saw. But did not return." My heart thudded in my chest. "Return from what?" He slowly raised a finger and pointed at the mirror. "From the other side of the mark." Then, barely above a whisper, "It is not a symbol. It is a lock. And now, Jonathan, it's already starting to open." Behind me, I heard something move, not with footsteps, but like skin against thought. And for a brief moment, the surface of the mirror breathed. The mirror pulsed. Not with light. Not with heat. It pulsed like a heartbeat, slow, steady, wet. I stood paralyzed in the stone chamber beneath St. Bellamy's, surrounded by the remains of the marked, each one frozen in a posture of failed return. You said I would go through, I whispered. The priest stood beside me, silent. No, he said. I said you already had. And with that, the surface of the mirror rippled and pulled. I didn't walk forward. I didn't jump. I was claimed. Like a thread yanked through the eye of a needle. Cold surged through my spine. My thoughts stuttered. My heart, or whatever it had become, stilled. Then I passed through. There's no vocabulary for what was on the other side. Not a place. Not a vision. It was an inversion, a geometry of thought and silence stitched together in endless recursion. Imagine walking into your own reflection and finding that it had been alive, watching you, memorizing you. Now imagine you're the reflection. I stood on what looked like ground but pulsed beneath my feet like muscle. The sky, if it was a sky, was matte black, but crowded, as if something immense was pressing its weight against it from the other side. Before me, a figure. Same as before. The one in the mist. Only now I could see more of it. Not fully. But enough. It had no face, no eyes, just a circular indentation in the center of its head, and 7 sigils orbiting slowly around where its hands should be. Each sigil looked familiar, not from dreams or visions, but from memories I hadn't made yet. It spoke without sound. You are the echo of a question we once asked ourselves. You carry the mark not as burden but as memory. The others rejected it. But you remembered. I shook. What am I remembering? The figure stepped forward. And the mirror, the one I had passed through, appeared behind it again. Only now, it didn't reflect me. It reflected 1,000 other versions of me, each one marked, each one frozen in a different moment of understanding or horror. One screamed. One wept. One burned silently from the inside. One simply stared into the mirror, mouthing something I couldn't hear. The mark is not placed upon you. It is drawn out of you. Suddenly, I was inside one of those other versions. I was strapped to a hospital gurney. Doctors hovered over me. I heard a flat line. One of them said, "He's coding, 7 minutes in. This is how you left." Then another vision. I was in my childhood bedroom. 7 years old. Staring into a cracked handheld mirror. On my forehead, faint, glowing, the mark. This is when it first saw you. Then another. I was standing in the chapel, but alone. Bones gone. Priest gone. And the mirror was broken. This is how it ends. I screamed. What do you want from me? The figure finally stopped. Its form shimmered, and in the rippling distortions I saw my own silhouette mirrored inside it. Not want. Only return. You are the gate we left open. I fell to my knees. My mind pulsed like it was trying to leave me. The mirror behind the figure started to bleed, not metaphorically. It wept black fluid, pooling into symbols on the ground, forming something too vast to comprehend, like blueprints made of pain. There are others, it said. They are waking up. Not all will survive the remembering. You must find them. Before they open the gate from the wrong side. Then a sudden jolt, like being snapped back into my own skin from 1,000 miles away. I gasped. I was back in the chamber. The priest stood beside me again, or maybe he never moved. His eyes were distant, unfocused, as though listening to something deeper than my voice. What was that? I said, trembling. His reply came slow, grave. You went beyond the veil of the mark. You saw the seed of it. The others who bear it, they are not chosen randomly. They are echoes of the same pattern. He turned to me, eyes suddenly sharp. Now you must warn them. Before one of them becomes a conduit. I stood there, body humming with aftershock. Behind me, the mirror cracked. Just once. A thin fracture, like a hairline in the skin of the world. And I realized the gate wasn't sealed anymore. It had begun to listen back. The mirror stayed fractured. A single thin line across its surface like a nerve stretched too tight. It didn't shimmer anymore, it watched. Not visually, not with eyes. But I could feel it calculating me. Like a lens adjusting its focus for something about to emerge. The priest said nothing more. Just handed me an old envelope sealed with wax. On the front, one word handwritten in faded ink. Begin. Inside, 7 names. 7 locations. All in the U.S. All ordinary. Except they weren't. Because I recognized one of them. Maya Dela Cruz, 33, paramedic, Denver. I remembered her from the mirror. She was the one who didn't scream. She simply stared. As if she'd seen it before. I found her 3 days later. She answered the door before I knocked. Her apartment was dark, blinds drawn. On the walls, mirrors covered in black cloth. She didn't speak at first. Just looked at my forehead. Not to see the mark, to confirm it wasn't visible. You've already crossed, she said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. So have you? We sat in silence for a long time. The kind that felt ancient. Pre-language. Then she whispered. You hear them too, don't you? The thoughts that aren't yours, but remember you anyway. I did. I still do. They come at night. Words in a tongue I don't understand yet ache to obey. One night she showed me the scar, just beneath her hairline. A faint spiral pattern like a healed burn. I tried to carve it out, she said, smiling too softly. Didn't work. It just went deeper. Together, we found the next 2. A blind painter in Baltimore who hadn't touched a brush in years but sketched spirals in his sleep. A deaf teenager in Boise who dreamed of towers made of teeth. Each of them had stories. Each had passed through the veil. None spoke about what they'd seen. But every one of them carried the same undercurrent of knowing. This was never about salvation. It was about containment. The mark, the mirror, the gate, none of them were meant to be understood. They were meant to delay. But something changed when we came together. Not a ritual. Not a summoning. More like a resonance. 7 marked minds gathered, and the world noticed. The final person was already dead when we arrived. Julian March, 61, former preacher. They found him in a motel outside Tucson. Every mirror shattered. Walls painted in his own blood. A single sentence scrawled over and over. We are the question it can't forget. We stood in that room for hours, breathing the absence. And then Maya looked at me, finally asking the question I'd avoided since the beginning. What do we do with it, Jonathan? Do we let it open? I wanted to say no. I wanted to say we should bury it again, deeper than before. But in my bones I felt the truth. We couldn't. The mirror was already opening. Not from our side. From within. The more of us there were, the more the pattern recognized itself. The gate didn't need unlocking. It needed a reflection. In the dream, the last one I've had, I stand in front of a mirror that stretches across the sky. Stars drift behind it like embers in black water. I reach toward it. But this time, I'm not alone. All of us are there. Maya. The painter. The boy. The priest. Even Julian, whole and weeping. And we understand, the mark was not a curse. It was a signal. A beacon. Not to something evil, but to something unfinished. An idea that saw itself once and never looked away. The mirror isn't a doorway. It's a question. And we are its echo. Now, it waits for an answer. And I am starting to understand. The answer is us.